The Battle of Avdiivka is 5 days, even plus actually, 7 days in right now, almost a week it has been going on, and now we can already draw conclusions. What were the Russians thinking? How did the battle go? What were the mistakes they made and what were the mistakes the Ukrainians made? In this video we will analyze the full Battle of Avdiivka. I would say one of the biggest battles of the duration of this war, definitely the biggest battles of 2023. What better way to go into the Battle of Avdiivka than this photo of two Russian soldiers taking a selfie of the year? If there were awards for the selfie of the year, these two Ivans would get it. Yes, my friends, I know what you're thinking. This is their tank in the back. This is a T-90 in the back. They're taking photo of their own destroyed tank, and I will now reenact of the thought process of these two Russian soldiers. Ivan, did you hear? Putin told the Ministry of Defense, for every destroyed tank, you get 500,000 rubles. Yes, so? Ivan, look, tank is destroyed. We're rich. Ivan, козёл, блядь, that is our tank. That is our T-90 burning. Shh, Ivan, silence. They don't know. Quick, take photo of proof. We destroy tank, we get rich in Russia. T-90 is the most modernized Russian battle tank on the battlefield because the T-14 Armata does not exist and it got destroyed, and these two Russian Ivans are deciding to take a picture. I mean, looking proud. Proud moment. Hashtag proud moment. Hashtag only Russian things. My friends, the Battle of Avdiivka, it is still ongoing, but the hottest phases are now over. The Ukrainian defense lines have stood their grounds, but let's first of all look at the craziest footage that I can show at least. There are a lot that I cannot show, but YouTube told me that this is fine. This is a footage coming out of Avdiivka. Russians made many armored columns, assault operations to Avdiivka, most of them failed. This is one of the Ukrainian drone footages of Russian infantry crawling back to their Russian side after their armor was taken out one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think that's 2 actually, so 10. We have 10 Russian Ivans crawling back. They're all moving in this direction. You can see it in the video. And I caught the video immediately when I saw what happened next. Let's say they were all sent to sleep with the fishes. They were all knocked out cold. Now, this is not an isolated event. This is what happened to most of the infantry and armored columns driving towards Avdiivka, and there were many. Let's look at the next one. See, Avdiivka is in many ways like the Azovstal, because if we zoom into the northern part of Avdiivka, we see, well, it says coke plant, but it's not what you think. It's actually a coal mine. And this is the Terrakon. That's what both sides call this mountain right here, the Terrakon, or the waste pile of this coal mine, since this is the highest point in the near vicinity of the city, and if you occupy this point, you have an overview over the city. This was one of the main Russian points of offensives. They really pushed into this mountain. We have plenty of videos, and Russian side actually already claimed that they have occupied this mountain, but then the Ukrainians released the drone footage showing knocked out cold Russian troops on the mountain, meaning yes, they do occupy the mountain with their bodies, but not with living Russians. Anyway, right now the Ukrainians hold this mountain, the Terrakon. But since on this channel we do make fun of the Russian military operations a lot because they are that funny, here I will start the analysis of the Avdiivka battle first of all about the one thing that the Russians did correctly. Yes, I know you cannot believe it, they actually succeeded in something. Russians attacked Avdiivka about a week ago with a force of a few brigades, mechanized brigades. We're talking about a few thousand men, 4,000 to 5,000 men. Now that is a huge amount of troops and armored vehicles that they used that the Ukrainians actually didn't have an idea Russians were gathering. So they did it all in secrecy, which is a feat on itself. Close to the front lines where there are drones everywhere, it's very difficult to even move 200 troops somewhere without the enemy noticing. Russians were able to do this for a few thousand troops and a couple of hundred of armored vehicles. Now, I have to give it to them, this was a job well done. But that's about when the job well done ends. Now we get to the actual attack and oh my god, get your popcorn. During the first hours of the battles, Russians sent two convoys on the south side and two convoys on the north side of Avdiivka. On the south side they were immediately hammered down, but on the north side near Krasnokharivka they actually gained some land, they occupied some new territory for a few hours before the Ukrainians counterattacked. Now what did the attack look like? The most typical Avdiivka battle Russian offensive convoy was formed up about 10 to 15 armored vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles or tanks. They were clustered together behind one another, bumper to bumper, following closely on these few roads going into Avdiivka. Usually they did not go onto the fields because the fields of course are mined, but little did they know the roads were also mined. So usually what happened, the first Russian vehicle, which usually was a tank, hit an anti-armor mine. The rest of the vehicles then clustered together behind the tank and then one by one tried to outmaneuver the tank, this resulting in them hitting mines on the fields because they had to cross onto the fields. This resulted in them being bogged down because there was about 3 to 4 armored vehicles destroyed in the front now, forming a bottleneck, which meant the rest of the Russian vehicles now were panicking because they couldn't go anywhere and they couldn't go back. So the infantry disembarked and found themselves a cozy little hole to protect themselves in, and then is when the drones and the artillery hit. Ukrainians sent wave upon wave of kamikaze drones and drones that dropped nades on top of the infantry. They bombarded these convoys non-stop with artillery until nothing was moving anymore and everything and anything was knocked out cold. I looked through all of the drone footage out there. Most of the tanks were destroyed by Ukrainian anti-tank guided munitions like Stugna, or Ukrainian artillery, or Ukrainian anti-armor mines. Then, usually what happened is the infantry started retreating, which happened mostly in the form of crawling on the ground, like we saw in the previous picture. And then Ukrainians dropped nades on them, also knocking most of them out cold, so now they're pushing up sunflowers somewhere in a field. This is how Ukrainians broke up these Russian convoys. Destroy the front, then they usually also destroy the back part of it, so the middle part was stuck. They had to spread out onto the fields were mined, infantry disembarked, drones picked off infantry, and boom, the rest is history. Also, to illustrate how little training the Russian tank crews actually got, there was a footage of a Russian T-62 on a field near Avdiivka, and there was a row of Ukrainian anti-tank mines. Now, they were not buried, they were not hidden or concealed, they were visibly on the ground, just dots. 2 layers of anti-tank mines very close to each other, a full row of them. Anybody in any world could see them, and it's a clear signal, don't drive over them because it will be, your tank will be knocked out cold. So what did the Ukrainian T-72 do? Well, yeah, they decided to go full blast into this row of Ukrainian anti-tank mines. And what happened? It's not what, well, it is what you think actually. Yes, the tank got knocked out cold and the crew had to disembark and they found themselves a hole and I don't know, maybe they're still in that hole. The point of this is they were so visible that you couldn't miss them and the Russians just drove directly over them. Now, what might be the biggest mistake of this Avdiivka offensive for the Russians is that it doesn't really have that big of a military purpose, because Avdiivka has always been a fortress. It has been under siege for the longest time. It has proven in this war and in the battles that Ukrainians are able to protect this fortress of theirs with minimal forces. And Russia's now decided to attack this very strong Ukrainian forces with maximum forces. And the outcome is how we predicted. It was a failure, complete disaster, with minimal Ukrainian losses. Now, there are some Ukrainian losses, but they don't compare to the Russian ones. Also, this attack completely ignores the southern front, because in the south, Russian logistics is in serious issues and their artillery is being hammered by the Ukrainian artillery. Now, what the Russians would need in the south is all of these reinforcements that were sent to Avdiivka. They should be in the south helping out the front line, which is the weakest for the Russians. But no, they sent it all to Avdiivka. This is worse than Bakhmut, because in Bakhmut they used prisoners in the groups of 15 to 20. They sent them wave after wave. But in this Avdiivka offensive, they used a few hundred troops with a few hundred armored vehicles at once. Sent them all together, clustered together, and the outcome was very predictable. For me, this battle of Avdiivka reminds me for the Battle of the Bulge. I think it was 1944, when Germans made this last all-out effort, last-ditch effort to push back the Allies, and they actually managed to do so for the shortest period of time, but they plundered all of their remaining resources that they could have used to lengthen the defense. But they plundered it all, they lost it all. This reminds me of the Russians doing this Avdiivka offensive right now. It's complete failure and it doesn't achieve anything. The resources the Russians plundered on it could be used to fortify their south, which is the weakest. But now we go to the reason why did the Russians do it, and there's a very good reason for it, and it's not what you think. Well, I'm not gonna say it anymore. Putin right now is in China, and the first meeting he did there was with a Vietnamese president. You can see it in this footage. The thing is, Putin is going to talk to Xi Jinping in China, and they're going to discuss the new world order, where there is a huge emphasis on Russia-China cooperation and a minimal emphasis or nothing at all on the United States, because the new world order in their eyes pushes away the United States. Now, for Putin's words to have more impact in China and to put Russia for a bigger position in China, Putin needs to show something on the battlefield. This is why he commenced this huge Avdiivka offensive right before he went to China, to have something very tangible to show to Xi Jinping that we, the Russians, can actually achieve something on the battlefield, and you need us in your new world order. But the offensive very much failed, minimizing Putin's impact on this visit. My friends, now I'll zoom into Marinka. This settlement has been the front line for the last 9 years, 2014 to 2023, and Russians commenced yet another attack into this settlement, and now I will describe it to you because the drone footage was incredibly graphic. Russian T-72 was out on the field shooting, and it was followed by 3 Russian infantry fighting vehicles. But wait, they looked very weird. They didn't look like infantry fighting vehicles at all. They more looked like Russian MLRS, but don't let yourself to be fooled. These were actually infantry fighting vehicles. They had like a cope cage or a full anti-drone cage, but it was made with full metal sheathings, making them look very different from what they were. Well, the T-72 was laying down some covering fires, and the 3 infantry fighting vehicles passed it and immediately struck Ukrainian mines, knocking them out cold. The infantry disembarked, was bogged down immediately on the fields, and then they were picked off by Ukrainian drones. Now, this is what has been happening in Marinka for the last 9 years, but for some reason I guess Russians like this routine and they carry it on year after year. Now, my friends, we go a little bit south from Marinka, where one of the biggest battles again happened yesterday. This is Ukrainian 79th Air Assault Brigade, so semi-special forces are responsible for this front line south of Marinka. Now, this is the settlement of Nova Mikhailka, and there's a road going south of it, and on this road actually Russians sent one of the biggest convoys we have seen against Ukrainian defensive positions from this road right here. Let's look at the footage. So this is the road I'm talking about, and this is the Russian convoy, and actually the drone footage is not wide enough to show you the entire convoy. I'm gonna say, because I confirmed it, this is about half of the vehicles in this convoy. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there were about like 5 or 6 more on the right side here and 5 and 6 more on the left side. We're talking close to 20 vehicles in a single convoy driving towards fortified Ukrainian 79th Air Assault Brigade positions. Now, I saw the whole video of what happened to this convoy, and I can describe a little bit to you. This convoy was struck with Ukrainian cluster munitions, so the infantry disembarked and actually penetrated into Ukrainian trench line, which by then Ukrainians had pulled back from. I guess this was a trap, a kill zone, because then from this trench line we saw footage after footage of 79th Brigade sending the exact shooting coordinates to their artillery crews, and the artillery shots landed directly into the trench line, where Russians thought that they are safe, and they actually occupied some Ukrainian positions. And then the waves of drones followed. When Russians were trying to carry away their wounded, the drones knocked them all out cold. And for some reason, these Russian troops, I guess they lacked the training. They were clustered together, 9, 10 men in one cluster in the trench line, creating in the middle of it, and kaboom, knocked out cold, sent to meet with their maker. Then the retreat started. They retreated along the same road, and actually I would say about a quarter of the entire attacking force made it back to the Russian side, but 3/4 of the force were knocked out cold fully. But that is not it, my friends. With the Avdiivka offensive comes more losses of the Russian air power. Another Russian Su-25 was shot down in the area. This already third in the last week. 3 Su-25s. This really means Russians are taking this very seriously and they have committed everything they have into this attack. They're sacrificing their planes like it's nothing. My friends, on this Saturday, so the upcoming Saturday, you will see a full documentary of my last trip to Ukraine and it's very juicy. Here's the trailer for it, check it out. Slava Ukraini! You can fix this car with a beer can. Very sex.
It was a Lada.
It was, yeah, you can see. There's like a pink dildo underneath there.
Oh! I'm dancing around there like a little girl, you know?
Kick me in the dick, I'm alright. It's the balls, you know?
Slava Ukraini!
Of course, if you want to see some information before the video comes out, check out my Instagram, link is in the description below, because there I post stuff immediately that people in YouTube have to wait for 1 to 2 months sometimes because editing takes time. You can see it all on my Instagram. According to United States intelligence data, about 1,000 North Korean shipping crates of military equipment and weapons have been sent to Russia. This means North Korea has really ramped up their military support to Russia. Yes, they don't have any modernized technology or weaponry, but that's not what Russia actually needs. They do need the old Soviet ammunition and infantry fighting vehicles and Kalashnikovs and all of that stuff. And unfortunately, North Korea has a lot of that stuff and then sending into Russia, because without Russians getting a bunch load of new equipment and support, they cannot carry on their offensive operations like Avdiivka for long, because they actually have equipment problems. My friends, these photos come from the British Royal Institute of the Defense Studies, and we can actually see North Korean shipping crates being unloaded into Russia by the thousands lately. In the past 30 days this has been going on. And I don't think they're sending iPhones or shoes to Russia. This is military gear. And also this is the Russian Dikoretsk ammunition depot, close a few hundred kilometers from the Ukrainian front line. And as you can see, 27th of July 2023, it was pretty much empty. 28th of September 2023, they have fully dug out these protective cavities for this ammunition, for this gear to be put inside, so Ukrainians couldn't blow it up like they have been doing for the whole year, because Russians have been piling their ammunition on a huge stockpile. Well, it saddens to me to see that Russians are learning and actually digging dugouts for their ammunition now, which is very smart. But the Avdiivka offensive is not even the biggest news. Ukraine struck Russian airfields yesterday and they actually hit a jackpot. Let's look at the satellite photos. This is the Berdyansk military airfield in southern occupied Ukraine. Russians have been digging these chopper positions, dugouts for helicopters to be landed on, and these are supposed to protect them when Ukraine strikes the entire area. Then these dirt walls actually do protect the choppers and minimize the loss of the choppers. On this photo you can actually count up to 20 Russian helicopters stationed not very close but quite close to each other in the Berdyansk airfield, making it a very juicy target. So what does Ukraine do? Yes, you're right, it attacks the Berdyansk airfield. Who would have known that if 20 Russian choppers are clustered together, Ukraine would attack it? Russian military telegram channel Fire Bomber describes the attack as such. There are losses among personnel and equipment after this attack in the morning. Fire Bomber calls it one of the most serious blows of all time. I mean, we can potentially count 10, 15 or 20 lost Russian choppers. It has not been confirmed, but Ukraine has precise weapons and Russian choppers were out in the open. I mean, if this will get confirmed, you will know about it. Russian helicopters, unfortunately, are a very big reason for Ukrainian armor loss, especially the Ka-52s, but also older ones, because their missiles can take out armor quite effectively, and since Ukraine cannot use their aviation massively on the front lines because it will be shot down, then Russians have something closer to air superiority. Of course they don't, the air is contested, but Russians can use their aviation more freely. And these choppers are deadly, so taking them out actually carries a vital role in this Ukrainian counteroffensive. Now I will read you a report from a Russian officer in Berdyansk who commented on this attack. It's not a very good morning. Ohoils, it's the Ukrainians, attacked our airfield at night where the army aviation was based with attack MS missiles. One of the most serious blows of all time in the northern military district, if not the most serious. There are losses in both people and technology. It's pointless to write about the fact that we need to draw conclusions so that it doesn't happen again. It will happen as long as this war continues. We must be prepared for this. I like how the fact is that the Russian officer already knows that there's no point to draw conclusions because their army does not change that fast. They need 20 attacks like that to actually draw any kind of conclusions. They need to lose 100 choppers stationed on the ground for them to think that, okay, maybe we should not station so close to each other, or maybe we should disperse them out across different airfields. The Russian army can change, but it takes a lot. My friends, as I mentioned, on this Saturday, the Ukrainian documentary, My Last Trip to Ukraine, comes out. It's a huge video, so stay tuned for it and definitely check on my channel on Saturday. You saw the trailer, and if you want to see sneak peeks and footages before the Saturday, check out my Instagram, link is in the description below. And now, my friends, I will read you 5 Patreon names who have been supporting this channel and who are the reason that I can actually go to Ukraine and I don't have to work all the time and I can do other projects. I mean, I don't have to work all the time, but I do work all the time anyway. We have Mikael Mink, Erik Semler, Robert Keeley. Robert became one of the bigger patrons actually. Thank you, Robert. Kapral Patrik Sepp oma abikaasaga. Yeah, that is an Estonian sentence. Thank you, my friend from Estonia. I think you're about the 4th patron from Estonia in the last 4 years. Skeeter McFlee. Thank you to all of these people. If you like my channel, the Patreon link is in the description below. You know what to do, my friends. And until my next update, which will be tomorrow, Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.